Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, Erin, should we start recording?
We just started recording.
Perfect. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever your local time may be. And my name is Payne, one of the co-chairs of ESIP Information Quality Cluster. On behalf of the workshop organizing committee, and I welcome you to this virtual pre-ESIP workshop, which is co-organized by ESIP IQC and sponsored by ESIP. I'm very happy to have you here for this live session. We had a great session this morning, and I'm looking forward to another great session. This session is chaired I'm co-chairing this session with Arena, David, and Rama. If you're just joining or have not done so, please enter your information in the Kiko chat notes or in Zoom chat. I prefer to be in a note. And the notes also contain other relevant information, and it will be our collective document throughout the session. Where you are entering that, couple things. And one is this session is recorded. And secondly, to minimize the interference, all participants will be muted and encouraged to enter your question in notes. If you don't have access to notes, you can do so in Zoom's chat. We also encourage you to change your name to your real name so other participants can recognize you. To do so, if you have over your Zoom account, there's a 3 dots next to your name. You can click at that to rename to your real name. Thank you. And during the Q&A session, you can either unmute yourself or raise your hand. To do that, if you click on your icon or you click on participants list, and you see a couple additional, including raise hands at the bottom of that list. Next slides, please. We have a very packed agenda today, and I will start providing some context in terms of why we are having this workshop and what are the goals we're trying to achieve. And we will have 6 presentations and followed by a presentation Q&A. Again, you can you're encouraged to put your names throughout the presentations and have the Q&A session afterwards. Then we'll have a 10 minutes breakout sessions for case statement review, and primarily to give a small group people opportunity to network, to see each other, to get to know each other a little bit better, and potentially exchange some questions about case statement. And we'll be back for a polling question, and they ended with the path forward. And most likely we won't have time to go too much detail on path forward, but you're welcome to encourage to put, again, input in the notes. Next, please. I think you probably want to be, yes. I think for this group, I don't really need to say too much about the importance of the knowledge about the quality of anything we make decision, whether it's buying cars or buying product or using data. And there are many different stories, and that's one I could relate it to. That kind of gets to 2 major factors why what we are trying to do here is important. One is the fact we have too much data. And when I was graduate students and using sea surface temperature, global sea surface temperature data set, there was only one. And that's a Reynolds SIT data product. There's no options. And now if you go to Google dataset search and high resolution, you can get over 100 datasets, and which one to use if you don't have any information or if you want to compare. And the second factor is we don't have time. We used, most of the people spending 70, 80% of time on getting data and learning about data qualities, getting data ready, whether it's learning how good the data is from other people's research, et cetera, et cetera. But now we don't have that time. We have to get things done. We have to get things fast. And then that gets to the next two bullet is why the consistent, not just the availability of the quality information, and it's the consistency. And you probably heard about garbage in, garbage out. And with the cloud and the machine learning technologies, it's great. There's new capabilities we can utilize. However, there's no person, no human there to tell machine which data is good or not. And if they, because it's not feasible, and there's really no human in the most machine learning and technology there. So for them to get a solid output, it's very important to have quality information. And it's also important to have the quality information that's consistent for them to integrate. The same thing goes to the data management and stewardship process. And we're crossing discipline and it's crossing different dimensions. Rama in his first talk will talk about the multi-dimensions. And so the importance of quality information cross for lifetime, for life cycle of data sets. And normally, even now, I think the situation can change, but normally when people talk about data qualities, they tend to talk about the scientific qualities. And those are published in science journals. It's very hard to pull out information and takes some kind of translation to get to putting into metadata as a quality metadata. And there are a lot of approaches nowadays for dataset quality, for evaluate it, capture them, and make them machine and human readable. But it's lacking of community standards and guidelines, and it has to come from community in order for them to be relevant. And next, please. So quickly, we were trying to do with this session and continue the session from the first one is to examine the need for dataset quality information and explore the challenging and approaches from different environment and organizations. And we discuss challenges for doing so consistently. And then if we have time, or we probably would do it offline, is to define the need and the scope based on the information presented and the discussion in the session. And hopefully we'll have a path forward from participants and interested parties, and set the timelines for the development of the community guidelines. I think that's all. The next, please. So Ivana, you can take over from here.
Thank you, Peng. Thank you for the introduction and context. Hi, everybody. It's good morning for me and good afternoon probably for most of you. My name is Ivana Ivanova, and I'm a senior lecturer at Curating University and involved in all sorts of groups dealing with data quality. Currently co-chairing the OGC's Data Quality Domain Working Group, and also leading the project to revise the ISO data quality standard for geographic information. As Peng indicated, we have packed agenda for today. This second session, we have 6 presentations, and I'm not going to read this list right now. It's available for you for your reference in the Google document. So without further ado, I would like to proceed with the first presentation. So Rama, floor is yours. If I can get it up here.
Okay, thanks, Ivana.
I will give you 1 minute warning.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to be talking about the ESIP AQC Information Quality Cluster and the multi-dimensions of data information quality. And Peng, myself, and David are the co-authors on this presentation. And I used to chair the Information Quality Cluster, and Peng and David are co-chairs. They continue to be co-chairs, but I've been replaced with Yashing Wei, who has taken over as chair for the group, and Bob Downs is an additional co-chair now. So let's go to the next slide. Ivana, next. Thank you. So the ESIP itself was initially formed in 1998 by NASA, and it's currently funded by NASA, NOAA, and USGS with US Geological Survey with over 140 partner organizations. And it provides a number of collaboration areas, collaboration tools and infrastructure. And Information Quality Cluster is one of the collaboration areas and deals with data and information quality. And it has been around for a while, but it was dormant for a while, and it got reactivated in summer of 2014. That was around the time when I got pulled in to be the chair of the group. I think it was 2015, maybe. Okay, let's go on. So the IQC vision is to become internationally recognized as, well, I'm not going to read the whole thing. We have a lofty vision there that you can read. And what do? We share our experiences and best practices. We collaborate nationally, internationally, and we've been, with the aim of that, we've been growing it over the last couple of years now. And we invite speakers at our monthly telecons, and we have organized sessions and make presentations at several of the meetings, AGU, AMS, etc. And we maintain a wiki site with a lot of useful references, and I've got the link there, and you can look at it at your leisure. So next slide. And we've had recent publications, Peng et al. Talking about roles and responsibilities of different organizations with respect to scientific stewardship, and Ramapriyan et al. 2017 publication dealing with multi-dimensions of data and information quality, and a few other aspects of maintaining, ensuring, and improving the quality of earth science data products. And a recent publication by Maroney et al. With 19 authors coming from various places, including other countries than the United States. That's about data uncertainty, various perspectives about data uncertainty. Next slide. So here, this is an excerpt from Peng et al. Paper from 2016. And the main point of this slide is the data producers and scientific stewards need to have clear roles in collecting and conveying the information about data quality and usability. And we intended to put at least a dotted arrow, bidirectional arrow between data producers and scientific steward, because communication between them is extremely important. And so, for example, providing product characterization in time, space, and uncertainty. So, and providing information on data source, algorithm, and processing steps, and error estimates. So these are natural purview of data producers. Whereas gathering that information and presenting it and conveying it to the users is the responsibility of the scientific stewards. So the goal eventually is to, with all this communication is to have transparent, traceable, machine-readable, human understandable data product or data product quality perspective, descriptive information to be provided that's easily accessible. Let's go on to the next one. So in the information quality cluster, we have defined 4 dimensions of data and information quality: science quality, product quality, stewardship quality, and service quality. And these fall naturally into the data product lifecycle as indicated here. So the scientific quality includes accuracy, precision, uncertainty, fitness for purpose, and so on. For example, the stewardship quality is how well the data are being managed, preserved, and stewarded, and metadata and documentation for access and use. And service quality is how well the data are being serviced, and do we have people who know about the data who can answer questions about the data, for example. That's user support and customer engagement. So let's go on to the next slide. So the Earth Science Data Uncertainty Perspectives paper consists of 19 authors led by David Maroney, and it focuses on discovery of approaches, meaning what have people thought about in terms of data uncertainty and how to represent it and so on. But this is to find out what has been going on in the world, and these do not have specific recommendations for the future. That's the next step that we need to take. And we document various perspectives about uncertainty. There are 4 different perspectives that are presented in the paper, and we identify commonality and differences between the perspectives, and identify new opportunities for IQC to facilitate and innovate in this area. And we have a link to all 3 papers, links to all 3 papers you can look at your leisure. Next slide. So this is, I believe, the final slide in the presentation. And so it gives you the contact information about Yashing Wei, who is the chair, and 3 co-chairs, and I'm the former chair. And the picture here, the figure, shows how many different organizations are interested in information quality, and in the US and
1 minute.
International domains. I think I'm done. Unless there are other comments you want to make, Peng.
No, that's great.
Okay, so let's continue, and I invite myself to talk. Yes, so next presentation is presented by me on behalf of Australian and New Zealand Data Quality Interest Group, and the purpose of this presentation is to introduce the group and report out our findings from a workshop we held a week ago as a pre-ESIP workshop on data quality. So I'll start with the group. The Australian New Zealand Data Quality Interest Group is one of the communities of practice curated by Australian Research Data. We have, this is a forum of Australian and New Zealand data providers, repository operators, and data consumers, and many of these members actually deal with earth science data, but not all of them. So we have people that work in the library, in scientific library or general library. We have people that are geospatial scientists, and we have others. The idea is to discuss the challenges and strategies for meeting data quality standards and procedures, or in more general, start talking the same and common data quality language. We have, mostly through our members, we have connection to international data quality communities, and we exchange experience and best practice from this. And this includes ESIP's IQC, and actually this group has been the main inspiration to set up a similar community of practice in our region, mainly because not always we can participate in, due to the time difference, not always can we participate in events led by ESIP. But we are quite young. We have been founded in October 2019, and the first initiative was by ARDC. Well, Leslie Wybon we have on the list, and I can't see all the participants, probably some others as well. Curating University and Australian National University, the three founding bodies. We are meeting monthly, at least that's what we aim at. And currently we are with 34 members, but growing. Every time we meet, there is some new member. As I mentioned, prior to pre-ESIP workshop last week on Monday, well, 6th of July, we had a workshop, and the idea was to elaborate on the goals set up by the pre-ESIP workshop. So the first 4 items from the goals mentioned by Peng just earlier. We wanted to use this workshop as a starting point to start to defining concepts in data quality. So at the first discussion on how people do understand data quality and what they feel are the biggest challenges, and try to see whether there are any best practices in Australia and New Zealand already in use, and then head towards agreeing on some kind of quality frameworks to support the interoperability and reusability of data. So the last 2 letters of PAIR. To this workshop, 57 people registered and 27 participated actively. And I wanted to make this distinction just to let you know that there are many people interested in the outcomes, even though they can't actually provide any input for whatever reason. During this workshop, we had 4 breakout sessions, and these were set up according to the goals defined by this pre-ESIP workshop. And in following 4 slides, I'd like to actually walk you through the key observations and questions in each of these goals. So for the first one, we tried to examine the needs for datasets quality information, and in the discussions we asked people what they thought were the biggest challenges and how this happens right now. And the main observations and questions are that people thought that it is essential to define the quality of especially for federated or aggregated data sets and the individual components that comprise these, but it's unclear how to do that. Now, very frequently in various sessions, we heard that for providers, it's quite difficult to decide which parts of metadata are essential for a user to be able to assess datasets fitness for use. And is there a possibility to create a general proposal or these discipline specific? Now, we also wanted to know what are the minimum and machine readable metadata that need to be provided with each data set, and how best to provide information about data sets quality constraints and being it on license or usage or usability of the data. In the second session, we went to explore approaches for evaluating dataset quality in an operational environment, and we saw that people mentioned that there is lack of organizational strategy for evaluating dataset quality. So some organizations follow best practice from different disciplines. Some have no idea how to do this in a systematic way. And in some organizations, this is happening in smaller units or individuals. So the question naturally was how to define the organizational unit for any strategy in an organization by topic or by roles, as mentioned by Rama earlier. And also, most participants wish for automated procedures for quality evaluation and curation, but there is no clear idea on how to do this, and if it is possible for overall data quality or just for parts. In the third session, we looked at what are the driving factors what are the most important needs for a community guidelines. First of all, everybody mentioned that we need to learn to speak the common quality language. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are not all earth scientists, and so for instance, earth scientists understands root mean square error, but from other disciplines, this is unknown. many or all participants mentioned that it's essential to manage data provenance as the minimum quality information to ensure the interoperability and reusability of data. And there is a need for guidelines for all parts of datasets life cycles on the creation, ownership, and curation, and provision of the metadata. And users also felt that there is a need for having some kind of way to label the quality of data. Next, and the last session, we discussed what are the challenges in curating and representing dataset quality information, and it all drills down that the biggest problem is the infamous problem of missing metadata, how to ensure these are there and the minimum required are there. So in summary, I just would repeat what I said. Most important item on this list is the last one. So we know there are quality standards, and then there are ways of managing quality, but many of these standards do not mandate provision of the quality information, and the Australian New Zealand community felt like this is important to change. I'm not sure what your opinion on that is. So what's next? What we want to proceed of continue discussing and try to start with defining common language on the meaning of quality, and start producing profiles for quality, probably per discipline. Thank you. That was my last slide. Yes. If there are any questions, feel free to hit them into the document. And let's continue with our third speaker, Yashing. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ivana. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. This is Yashing Wei from Oak Ridge National Lab, and this presentation provides a summary of the activities and outcomes from the NASA ESDSWG Data Quality Working Group, or DQWG, during 2014 and 2019. So first, I want to say that this was definitely a group effort, and I appreciate all our working group members, including chairs David and Rama. And you can see through the participants list, you can clearly tell there was a strong connection between NASA DQWG and the ESIP Information Quality Cluster. Next slide, please. So first, I want to give you a very brief overview of NASA's Data Quality Working Group. It's one of NASA's Earth Science Data System Working Groups, or we call that ESDSWG. And it's formed at the annual meeting of the ESDSWG in 2014 as a result of interest expressed by the NASA's ESDIS project, as well as measures program investigators. So we concluded the DQWG effort in 2019 after publishing 5 suggested practices and technical notes through NASA ESDIS Standards Office, or ESO. So DQWG's mission statement was to evaluate and make recommendations to the NASA ESDIS project and also headquarters ESDS program for improvements in capturing, representing, and enabling of data quality information, describing accuracy, precision, uncertainty, and applicability, which means fitness for use, stewardship in NASA Earth Science domain. Next slide, please. And this diagram summarizes the trajectories of DQWG activities from 2014 to 2018. Ivana, I believe you probably have to click multiple Next slide, because there is some animation here. Apologize. And we started with 16 data quality use cases relevant to the NASA Earth Science Data and Information System, and from which we came up with 12 high-level prioritized recommendations about data quality. And we then choose 4 low-hanging fruits out of those 12 recommendations. And from there, we drilled deeper and collected more concrete implementation solutions and also implementation strategies to improve the 4 phases, which contain capturing, describing, facilitating discovery, and enabling use of data quality information. And the outcomes of the QWG effort really bloomed from there. And a data call template to assess the science quality as well as product quality of earth science data was developed and also used to perform a data call pilot study to assess selected NASA earth science data products. And also, we leveraged the NASA reuse readiness level and performed the reuse readiness assessment of the software solutions of those total 26 implementation solutions for data quality. And eventually, we also published 4 suggested practices and technical notes through NASA ESO, which I will mention briefly in the following slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. So one major outcome of DQWG was the Operation Solutions Master List. And total 26 solutions were identified. And we published them through the public NASA Earth Data Wiki here. And solutions can either be a software, documentation, or standards and practices. And solutions supposed to cover the following implementation categories. Data quality information. This is about the representation and dissemination of data quality information. And then facilitate the data center and the provider PI communication. Solutions to address metadata creation and also standards compliance checking and reporting. And also guidance and instructions for data users and the user services and knowledge base. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, another set of major outcome of DQWG are the suggested practices and technical notes published through NASA ESO, and they can be accessed from those 2 links provided on the slides. And the first set provides data management plan templates enhanced with data quality elements for both data centers and data producers. And the second set provides data quality recommendations for data producers and distributors, as well as the reuse readiness assessment of data quality software products. Next slide, please. And this slide lists those 12 high-level prioritized recommendations. And each recommendation covers 2 aspects. One aspect was the data systems, and the other is the science aspect. And rows highlighted in blue were those 4 low-hanging fruits, as I mentioned earlier. And those recommendations covered 4 phases of the data quality information. Ivana, if you can click one more time. So those 4 aspects of data quality information. So I will not go through each of those recommendations, and I encourage you to check the slides after Word and also check the documents from the links provided before.
1 minute.
Okay, last slide, please. This is the last slide. There are too many things definitely to cover in this 8 minutes. And many resources and documents produced by DQWG can be accessed through the URLs provided in these slides. And last thing I want to mention is that even though the focus of DQWG was NASA Earth Science domain, Its data quality recommendations and many other outcomes are applicable beyond NASA, and hopefully can bring insights into the goal of this workshop, which is to build the community guidelines for data quality, curation, and presentation. So please check the resources and feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Hey, Yashing, I just saw a text from Ted Haberman that one slide was skipped. I don't know which one.
I'm not sure. I think there were some animations on the slides, and I believe I have covered every single slide.
Yeah, no, he says maybe not. Okay, that's fine.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you, Yashin. Bob, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk today about the GIS data management and the data sharing principles, as well as trust and the implications for data quality. Next slide, please. So the Group on Earth Observations, which is an international organization with over 100 government agencies worldwide, and 100 partner organizations, of which ESIP is one, has developed the GIS data sharing principles and the GIS data management principles. So GIS is the Group on Earth Observation System of Systems. And then the other principles I'm going to talk about are the trust principles for digital repositories. And they came out of the RDA certification working group that's looking at some of these issues as well. Next slide, please. So the GIS data management principles, they cover discoverability, accessibility, usability, preservation, and curation. And then within those categories, there are specific principles. For example, under discoverability, there's metadata for discovery. And the implication for data quality is to describe your data quality in metadata, succinctly. In terms of accessibility, the principle is online access. And there you would want to place your data quality information online. For usability, there are 4 different principles: data encoding, data documentation, data traceability, and data quality control. So for data encoding, you'd certainly want to encode your data quality information. And for data documentation, you would want to describe your data quality in the documentation. For data traceability, you want to capture your data quality information early. And for data quality control, you want to assess the data quality and record that in your results. And then under preservation, there are 2 principles: data preservation, and there the implication for data quality is to preserve your data quality information with the data. And the other principle under preservation is data and metadata verification. And there you want to verify your data quality assessments and records. And then lastly, the curation aspect of data management principles is data review and reprocessing and persistent and resolvable identifiers. So for data review and reprocessing, we want to review and reassess the data quality routinely. And for persistent and resolvable identifiers, we want to provide persistent access to the data quality information. Next slide, please. So the GIS data sharing principles, there are 3 of them. And the first one is really focusing on open data by default. And so for that, we want to describe data quality in the metadata that is freely distributed with the open data. The second GS data sharing principle is to they should be made available with minimal restrictions at no more than the cost of reproduction and reproduction and distribution. So there we want to provide data quality information with minimal restrictions and limited cost. And then for the last GS data sharing principle 3 states that the shared data products and metadata, they'll be available with minimal time delay. So what we want to do is to conduct and share the results of data quality reviews in a timely manner. Next slide, please. So for the trust principles, and they stand for transparency, responsibility, user focus, sustainability, and technology. We also have implications for data quality. So in terms of transparency, we want to let our users know about the specific services and the data holdings that are verifiable by publicly accessible evidence. And so for data quality, we want to disseminate the results of data quality assessments with the data. And for responsibility, we want to ensure the authenticity, integrity of data holdings. And there we want to ensure that the data quality is assessed and described for the prospective users. In terms of the user focus, we want to make sure that data management norms and expectations of target user communities are met. So in terms of user focus, we want to foster the usability by enabling users to understand and assess the data quality. Sustainability is referring to able to sustain services and to preserve the data holdings for the long term. So there we want to provide consistent data lifecycle capabilities for assessing data quality. And then lastly, for technology, which means we want to provide infrastructure and capabilities to support secure, persistent, and reliable services. There we want to develop and maintain capabilities to assess and describe data quality. Next slide, please. So in summary, for data management, we want to facilitate discovery, access, usability, preservation, and curation of the data quality information. And for data sharing, we want to provide data quality information with open data, minimum restrictions, limited costs, and in a timely manner. And then for digital repositories, we want to employ transparency, responsibility, user focus, sustainability, and technology to provide data quality information with the data.
1 minute.
I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. And we have our next presenter, Christina.
Hello, my name is Christina Leaf. I'm the lead of the International Expert Group on Climate Data Modernization, which is supported by WMO. I'm going to be talking to you about a framework that has been in the makes since 2014. It's the High Quality Global Data Management Framework for Climate. And the goal of that framework is to improve the quality of climate data management for better climate monitoring. Next slide, please. One thing I should say about the previous slide is that this group has many experts from all around the world and several working groups under that. I'll mention a little bit more about the working groups afterwards. Next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about the background, why this framework came to being. So there was a need for more reliable climate data sets covering all environmental variables, and this for monitoring climate variability and change, modeling and predicting future climate, and also setting climate policy. Next paragraph, please. So to accomplish this, there was to get more reliable climate data sets, you don't only need sound observation practices, but you also need good management and stewardship. So that's what the framework is focusing on. Next slide, please. So this is under the guidance of the World Meteorological Organization, which is a global standard-setting body for meteorological and related practices, including climate data. It falls under the United Nations. It has 193 members and territories. I'm just going to refer to the HQ-GDMFC as the framework, and it was endorsed at the WMO Congress in June of 2019. And I'll be talking a little bit what falls under this framework. So the framework has 3 components. Next slide, please. So it has a manual. It has an assessment tool, which is a maturity matrix, and then a catalog, which is a portal, the WMO Climate Data Catalog, where you can access the assessed data sets, but also information like download or link to the manual. So the manual promotes data management standards and best practices for ensuring high quality data sets for use in climate policy and services. The assessment tools and essay tools, because there are 2 now, so there is one we developed in a working group that falls under the IEG-CDM. And this working group was led by Peng. And we developed a matrix focused on data management and stewardship. And we're recently also developed one for national and regional data sets, which is more geared towards operational data. And I'll be mentioning a little bit more about that in the next slide. And then the catalog is online at KNMI, at the Dutch Data Center. And it allows for people to go and see which data sets were assessed. For the moment, we have a focus on global data sets. The metadata and data visualization is done through the KNMI Climate Explorer. Next click, please. So this is all done to accomplish, to have better discoverable, accessible, usable, authoritative, high quality, and well-managed climate data sets available for the purposes I mentioned before. Next slide, please. So this is the manual.
I think we lost audio, perhaps.
Oh, can you hear me?
Nope, I can hear Christina. I'll chat. Christina, we can still hear you. I'll chat, David.
Okay. So this is the manual. It's the first of its kind for in terms of climate data management at WMO. Next click, please. So it contains, so we're trying to standardize definitions, recommended procedures, best practices, regulations on climate data management. Next click. It applies to climate observations, analysis, and predictions. Next click, please. And this is something I saw in when you mentioned, Ivana, in your presentation about whether these we have some regulations that are making this sort of like more than a guidance for our members, for the 193 WMO members, member countries. There is actually a shall and a should. Next click, please. So the shall means it's mandatory for WM member states. So These are just practices in data management that members now need to follow, because they actually voted on this at the WMO Congress last year in June of 2019. So this has been actually voted on and admitted as rules that countries will follow. And then should means it's recommended practices. Next click, please. So this has become part of the WMO regulatory publications. And like I mentioned before, it's the first time climate data management has a regulatory status. Next click. So this is actually available online. It's available in 4 languages for the moment. I think other WMO languages will be added afterwards. Next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit more about the self-assessment tools. So these are the matrices we've developed. So the first one, the global one, the Stewardship Maturity Matrix for Climate Data, or SMMCD, was developed by a working group that was led by Peng. And we didn't start from scratch. We actually looked at what was done in terms of maturity matrices. And we looked at the NCI SMM. We looked at the core climax system maturity matrix from UMETSAT. So we did some investigation and we came out with a maturity matrix. And I'm sorry, I don't really have time to present it here, but it has 4 main categories and basically assesses data access, usability, usage, quality management, and data management.
Sorry, 1 minute.
This provides high quality data for developing climate services for policy and decision making in a variety of applications. So we recently, and it will almost have a version 1 of the SMMCD for national and regional purposes, which focuses more on operational data management and stewardship. It should be released, version 1 should be ready in a couple of weeks. And all these 2 matrices actually do have a guidance booklet and also a template for self-evaluation. Next, please. So this is the WMO data catalog. This is where the data sets are that have been assessed are listed. For the moment, if you do want the assessment, it's by request. So we're trying to make it easy to read in terms of how the management of a data set is being done. Oops, sorry, my phone. And then also, as I mentioned before, this is hosted at KNMI, and it links to metadata over there for the data sets and visualization tools. And you have, I listed a URL for the catalog. And it was an international effort. And it will be continuing in terms of assessing. Now we're focusing on assessing the national and regional data sets. The effort is continuing. Next slide, please. So thank you. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Christina. And we have our last presentation this afternoon. Shelley, the floor is yours.
Ivana, thank you so much. And thank you to our conveners, Peng and Ivana, David and Rama. I'm incredibly honored to be invited to this very rich session, and being the last speaker is a bit heady. And what I hope I can do with this presentation is give you an idea of how valuable your work is and how it's connecting in to some of the broader community effort that's happening. If you could go to the next slide. So many of you are familiar with the position statement that AGU has on data, but it is such a guiding force for the work that I do, and how it connects to a lot of the initiatives and committee work at AGU, and the importance of our data as a world heritage, and that it needs to be cared for. It's a wonderful document, and recently updated just last year to reflect what's happening with the FAIR guidelines and extension to other digital objects, and really grounds us in moving forward. Next slide, please. This quote comes from a publication, the results of a survey that you can gain access to there on Figshare, the state of open data, and this team has been putting together a survey over the last number of years. And this particular survey struck me in a couple ways. First of all, they're no longer asking the question directly, do you share your data or not? I mean, you see that in there, but it's much more nuanced now. We are seeing researchers sharing their data. But what came out is really, I want to say frightening. That's the word I want to use. But I think now that we're at this point, a lot of the concerns about if I share my data, will it be used properly, are now at the foremost. And the work you're doing in this data quality effort across all of your communities is really critical for establishing that trust and establishing that understanding about data to help mitigate this issue. So you see E&H talking about the fact that it's not research data in reuse, but a matter of trust. And it's trust in how people will use your data once it's made openly available. Next slide. Could you click 5 times? I apologize for animating this. So this is one of the graphics within the report. And I want to highlight for you that these are the concerns from researchers, those that have responded about sharing their data set, where the most commented on is that issue about misuse. But then you see other challenges. I don't think this will shock you. Cost of sharing. What do I do with licensing? What are the rights to the data? Do I actually keep my rights? Who has the rights? And credit. Some of that has relationships to data quality, but if you could click 4 more times, please. Thank you. There are additional elements in here that I think relate more clearly to the work that you are doing. How useful is the data? Has it been presented, and has it been organized? And I would say documented, I would add that here. What happens if somebody finds errors? So this goes to really how well that data has been prepared, and if there's been quality checks on it. And what happens if I can't, the findings of my research can't be repeated, and you can bring in concepts of workflow and provenance and how well the methodology has been documented in a number of other issues. That would probably be an entire week-long discussion by the experts on this call. Next slide. So knowing that we have these challenges and that you're all working towards really valuable goals, there is this really interesting set of inflection points. You all are familiar with FAIR, and I'm really grateful that Bob Downs introduced trust a moment ago, which is a really important element for our community. But I'd like to give you the 3 together because they support each other, and they have a different viewpoint. So you know FAIR, care comes out of the Indigenous data community, and of course, trust comes out of an effort from RDA. Next slide, please. Here's the very high level. FAIR would be focusing on reuse, very heavy requirement for machine readability. Care, you probably don't know as well. Think about the people aspects of sharing, and if I'm using the data appropriately, did I have permission to use it from that community? Am I giving back to that community such that they actually get value from my research and they can have access to that data? It's a much different way of looking at data creation and data usage. And then, of course, the critical elements within trust as aspirational goals, practicing data preservation. Next slide. So to give you a sense for how AGU is coming at this, we are both a society and a publishing house, and we do partner. ESIP is one of our partners. World Data System is one of our partners, for those of you that are associated with Core Trust Seal. So on the left here, and please give me the luxury of just using one slide to try to give the big picture for AGU, knowing that there are many slides and many points of view, but I've chosen just one and what I think is most relevant to this conversation. So the humor here from you is appreciated. So for our researchers, for the members of our society, they deserve credit for the data sets that they've created and for the software created. And that needs to benefit them in their promotion and tenure and other recognition and rewards. That they should be able to find and access digital products like data and software and understand it well. And they have access to the best practices that are created by communities such as ESIP and this one. And then as authors, they have the responsibility of preserving their data sets and digital outputs in appropriate repositories, preferably with Core Trust Seal certification, but that's not always possible. We know that that's an evolving space, and that those products are cited with persistent identifiers in order to make proper linkages with papers and ORCIDs, and there's availability statements, and the metadata, which of course we can write volumes on, is adequate for understanding and quality determination. Next slide.
Sorry, Sherry, 1 minute.
Thank you. So at AGU, we have overarching guidance. We've received a lot of feedback from this very high level guidance. Next slide. And with that feedback, we were actually making journal specific guidance. And if you could hit the clicker one more time, please. And again. And I think what's important to demonstrate is that this guidance points to work by others. We're trying to guide the authors to the relevant material. So as you're developing practices for the community, we are incredibly delighted to continue to direct our authors in that direction. Next slide. Thank you so much for the opportunity to complete the session talks.
Thank you very much, Shelley, and thank you all presenters for great talks and for keeping within the time limit. And I think there's nothing else left for us than to proceed to our questions and answer session. Should have some slides for that. Yes. So we have a few guidelines in here how to proceed. So we have question and answer chairs, and this is all going to happen in preferably in the Google document, or if you can't access that, then in Zoom.
Yes, so we have a number of questions already entered that I've captured. If it's okay with you, Peng and Ivana, I can go ahead and read them.
Yes, please, and I will stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Great. Okay, so I have this captured from the beginning in order here. The first one is from Rama to Bob Downs. The question is, with the final DPM in your list, do you imply that persistent identifiers are needed for data quality separately, or is it enough if the datasets have PIDs? I'm assuming PID is persistent identifiers.
Yes, that's the case. And so to answer the question, certainly the data need persistent identifiers, but if the quality information is in a separate document, like a documentation document, or it could be a data paper, for example, where the data quality information is presented, then that certainly should have its own persistent identifier, and the data should be linking to the persistent identifier of the either the data paper or the data documentation information, so that people who are accessing the data can get to it. And likewise, if there is a data paper or a data documentation, those also should link to the persistent identifier of the data set, so that there's this reciprocal relationship between them, and hopefully they would all remain persistently identifiable.
Thank you, Bob. And I just want to check with Rama. Rama, is that a satisfactory answer? Did you have any follow-up on that one?
That's a satisfactory answer. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the next question actually is also to Bob, and this one's from myself. It's actually a two-part question. So the first part is, which data repositories have currently implemented the GEOS data management principles?
Okay, I can tell you that the implementation of the GEOS data management principles is not being tracked. There was a working group of GEOS or GEO that was developing the data management principles and the implementation guidance for those, and that working group ended last year, and then now a new working group is being formed. It just actually kicked off a couple months ago, called the Data Working Group. So that's the GeoData Working Group, or GeoDWG for short, and that's starting to look at new issues, and part of that is looking at and encouraging the implementation of the GEOS data management principles. Since that group's just getting started now, it's hard for me to predict exactly which working groups will be formed, for example, and how they'll begin to proceed in terms of the directions. But that's certainly a good idea, and we can certainly raise that with the new chairs of the working group.
That's really great, Bob. You actually probably answered my second question, which was, does GEOS or any other organization provide any auditing services to ensure sustained adherence to these principles? So I'm assuming the answer to that is no, because there currently is no implementation tracking. But one suggestion I had was maybe this could be a candidate for a new type of WDS or World Data System Standard certification. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have to laugh a little because I'm a member of the Core Trust Seal board, and so we at the Core Trust Seal are already conducting certifications. I'm not sure that it's necessary to have separate certifications, but I certainly think that including concepts from the data management principles and the data sharing principles and trust into the Core Trust Seal certification makes a lot of sense. And for the next round of revisions for the Core Trust Seal, I'm sure that that's the direction we'll be going in. So that's a great question, David. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just trying to keep up with your talking there with my typing. All right. So next, we will move on again. This is back to Rama, but this is a question directed towards Christina. The question is, how does the World Meteorological Organization enforce the SHAL regulations?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So the way this manual was put together, the manual was circulated among the 193 countries and territories, and there were questions and modifications. So finally, when the WMO Congress came together, everybody voted to have this approved as to be the regulations that they will follow. And the shall is something that they've agreed upon. So there is no such thing as a, an enforcement police, but the members have made that commitment by endorsing the manual to follow those data management practices.
Okay, and Rama, did you have any follow-up to that, or are you satisfied with that response?
No, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to see if there was a separate enforcement mechanism. Looks like it's not. It's just the goodwill of the people of the countries who have made the commitment.
Yeah, they had a chance to take a look at everything and endorse it. So, you know, this is again a body of scientists and country representatives that agreed to follow these regulations.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, Christina and Rama. Okay, so the next question is from Yaxing to Christina. Question is, does the World Meteorological Organization address feedback from data providers / users on your assessment done to their products?
So thank you for the question. I didn't have time to really go into how we assess the data sets, but we had a subject matter expert that worked with the data owner, data provider. And in some cases, there was a team of people who did the self-assessment. Then that self-assessment was actually evaluated by the Commission for Climatology expert team on data development and stewardship. And they worked with the data provider, data manager in terms of going over the assessments. So quite a few people looked at the assessments, and then there was a consensus that came together in the final assessment. So it was a whole process. That said, these self-assessments can also be used by data managers to find where the gaps are. We actually had some data managers that had never really evaluated the quality of the data management and did find some issues and actually fixed them before the assessment was completed. So that makes it an important tool. We also found by developing the maturity matrix for national data sets that we already have some countries, it's not even out in version 1, that are already using that to evaluate the management of their data sets because they're eager to find if there are issues. So these maturity matrices are tools that are that have a need out there, and we have users that are eager to use them. Does that answer your question, Jaya?
That's a great answer, Christina.
Great. Thank you.
David, I think you only have time for one more question.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So I'm gonna go on. Actually, you have another one for Shelley. I'm gonna skip over to Brian Westra because this is a new person who had a question for Shelley. And I think Shelley partially answered it in the chat, but you're welcome, Shelley, if you want to recite it aloud as well. So the question from Brian is, I wonder if cost means staff time or is it for actual repository related costs?
So I think thank you very much. I think you're referring to the survey that was done. Since it was the point of view of the researcher, I believe that it is any cost to the researcher for depositing their data and having it curated by a repository. But I do give a link to the entire paper, which does include the data for validation.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to do a time check with Peng. How are we on time, Peng?
We kind of need to move on.
Okay,
Again,
I'll
people
turn it back over
encouraged
to you.
to communicate through the Google Doc.
Okay, so shall we turn this back over to Peng or Aaron? Okay, thank you.
Irina, do you still have the slides?
I do.
Okay,
Yes.
I believe Aaron would send us to breakout rooms.
Are you ready to go?
Yes, and this is the time when we go for the case statement review. Yeah.
Okay. I am ready to open all the rooms.
You want to talk through this, Peng, or shall I?
You can go ahead. So we may actually have time to discuss a little bit.
Yeah, so just briefly then, some of you have seen this already in session 1. There is a plan and a path forward with some timelines attached to this. What we would like to have is, well, we'll start with reporting out from what we collated in our collaborative document next week, July 22nd, in the workshop at ESIP. And then we would like to complete the summary of the workshop to distribute to the attendees and update the workshop website. So I'm not sure. The idea is that we all will have the link to the document and we can still add our inputs. Ben, is that correct?
That's correct. I think the difference will be that we will have a separate collective Google Doc for people who are committed to the development, but the review we probably would open up to all the registered, and then after that we will have a wider review.
Right. So, and the idea is to have a guidelines document by March 2021. So ambitious timeline, but it's better to set it that tight to accelerate the work, isn't it? So just one more question, Peng, while I have you here. This document we edited in the pre-ESIP workshop, is that going to be available throughout the summer meeting? For people
I believe
like
so, but that's actually another person, Terry, asked that same question as well. That probably, Aaron, would this Google Doc be available throughout the next week, 2 weeks?
My plan is for it to be available as long as you want it to be available. This event, you'll be able to get to it through your KikoChat profile. You can see events and past events, so you can come back to it that way. But I would also, if you're interested in keeping it, Terry, I might suggest, and actually I can put this in the link. I'll put a link to the Google Doc directly in the chat, in the Zoom chat. And I would just say save it to your drive too, so that you have it and don't have to worry about navigating back here.
Yeah, I also
Good
like
question.
a lot. So we do have this Kiko chat event space that at least for next 2 weeks during the summer meeting, people can come back, look at the notes. And if we have any updates or people have some time offline, putting additional input, or they want to have a separate breakout sessions, please feel free to reach us to one of the co-chairs. We can actually schedule a meeting with you. And Ivana, I think I want to, before you end, I do want to mention people who participate have not entered their information. We encourage you to do so at the beginning of the session.
Yes. So I think that's all we have. So please, if you didn't include your name, do so at the beginning of the session as Peng suggests. And we would like to conclude this sharing slides with this last one beautiful collection of all participating partners in this effort. And I'd like to thank Peng for organizing everything.
Where are the slides available from? Are they embedded in the notes?
Yes, they are all linked from the document.
And I think in the coming weeks, then I will be working with ESIP to publish them on ESIP Figureshare, and they will be linked to the website as well. But all the slides are linked in the notes.
Right, okay, so I'll stop sharing, and we still have some time for discussion and some observations and chatting.
Yeah, I'll be around for more time if people wants to chat or exchange ideas or questions. And
I thought we were supposed to do key takeaways, which we forgot to do while the whole meeting was in session. I just remembered.
That's true. I do have a statement under each section to ask people to do that offline, and hopefully I have not get a chance to look at the Google Doc. So let's see if people who needs to leave, please do so, and who has some time and want to work on the key takeaways, we could. Ivana, what do you think?
Yes, we can stay. I can stay still longer.
Okay.
If I just stop talking, I fell asleep, so sorry in advance.
What page of the notes are we on? I'm lost.
So the key takeaways, let me see, because we are writing, I'm at the Google Doc now. So they should be at the end of the second session. And let's see, takeaways, so will be page 21 under the pretty picture
Who
I
did
made.
that? Oh, it was you. I think it's brilliant.
Yes.
I mean, it probably needs a bit of refinement, but
Of course, yeah. This is just some straw man.
I feel like going to a certain government organisation and throwing that in front of them and saying, "Here, what's your quality problem with our data? Where? Which bit?"
So it tries to capture. I'm glad you like it. So it tries to capture the stage of dataset life cycles. So hopefully that will be something for people who participating in development will try to get a consensus. And then the next, I have like a 4 dimensions. And under each dimensions, there are different documentations are needed, each different maturity, quality assessment. And the metadata, of course, is cross everything.
Yeah, no, I'd always got to them. Are you complaining about the scientific content, or is it something to do with the technical issues? And just giving that twofold division, I'd get dumb looks anyway. But no, this is really good.
Okay, cool. The when they are overlapping, I guess we just put it between 2 quadrants, and I do see potentially they may have overlapping. So for the key takeaways, those are some of the questions. Of course, share insight, and I love to hear a story, the data quality stories.
Oh.
Are you able to get to there?
Yeah, I'm on bottom of page 21, but what do you want? Do you want us to make comments, or do you just want